And here we go.
Sports!
I listen to you guys all the time.
It's awesome.
I'm in the mood for one of your classic anecdotes.
Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, that's enough.
Hey guys, there is someone I want you to meet.
Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun on Off the Hook Sports. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Now, the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
We got spring foot. We've got plenty going on, so welcome to the program. If you're already on board, please hit that like and subscribe button because we are rolling with a hot show today. Also, a couple of very special guests. Craig Cobb, former Tennessee pitcher, will join us. We'll talk a little baseball Vols, the Diamond Vols, in case you have good. They won the national championship. This just in. Also, Bert Bertelkamp will be later in the program as Bert announced his retirement. Longtime color guy for the University of Tennessee basketball broadcast. And I say this to Bert, but it's absolutely true. He's my favorite color guy of all time. And I say that because his enthusiasm bleeds through the microphone. He's for Tennessee, but he's not homerish. He's not afraid to point out some of Tennessee's shortcomings. And I absolutely love Bert Bertelkamp. I think he was a fantastic pick. I know the transition from Bob Kessling to Mike Keith. I don't know which direction they'll go. We're going to hope our own Steve Hamer gets that, but Bert Bertelkamp right up at the top. Also, practice news from the Vols as they it's shorts, but it's a practice. David Sanders with some very, very strong words about his ability. Is he too cocky? We'll discuss. Boo Carter works on offense at slot receiver. We'll get into that as well. As I mentioned, Craig Cobb will join us this day in Tennessee sports history. And the basketball Vols won, I think I counted roughly, Caleb, and it's about 5 million awards yesterday. So congratulations to them. And then we'll talk about the Chris Lofton SEC Storied piece that went out yesterday. I love these. And do you know, I don't think I've told you this, Caleb. How are you doing, by the way, sir?
I'm doing good. I was waiting for that, but I'm doing well.
Did you know I think there's a big group that I think they kind of workshop. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. But did you know they're strongly considering doing one of those on Cooper Mays?
Really? Did not know that.
They reached out to us and asked for some video clips that they could use. They found a couple in particular. So that's super, super cool. And I don't, we talked about this, but if you didn't see every single Vol report brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, you probably didn't know this. But here's a guy who already had strong faith, and then he felt like faith, especially leading into the 2023 season, in which he had 3 abdominal tears, really helped him and kind of reaffirmed his faith. So it's going to be a great story. I hope they come out with it. And I mean, Cooper Mays, stand-up guy. We talk about over and over how hard it's going to be to replace him. Caleb, I'm not sure which is tougher to replace, his actual play or his leadership.
Yeah, I agree. And the leadership was the biggest thing. That was just his understanding of the offense and things like that was just totally difficult to replace him. We saw that when he was out in 2023.
Good. That Florida game, not pretty. All right, we're going to jump right into it and get into the Boo Carter conversation. What type of impact can he have for the Vols? The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. I'll remind you that if you hit that thumbs up button, you'll be one of my favorite people. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones. Again, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Today's tough question. Boom. You heard that? Take it. The Dave Hooker's Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
All right, today's tough question is this. Will Boo Carter have a major impact this fall? And the reason I ask that is twofold. Number one, he's got his hands full on defense, right? We know he's a talented player, but still, that's a full-time job, needless to say. And number two, I've heard coaches say that they'll play players in different places, and they didn't because they didn't think it was best for the program. But it's a good way, especially now with the transfer portal, to keep people around. So we'll ask that question right back. Will Boo Carter have this fall? Caleb, what do you think?
I think he's going to have a Travis Hunter level impact. And the reason I say that is because they're literally running him full-time reps on both sides of the ball. He was getting reps in the secondary. He got multiple reps at wide receiver, and he's still their primary punt returner. And so I think they are going for a Travis Hunter look. Now, Tim Banks said after practice, quote, Boo understands he's a defensive back for us. The goal every year is to be the last man standing, so we're trying to do anything we can to give everybody the opportunity to grow. His role in offense will be dictated from coach and at this point, he seems to be handling it really well. So they still seem to say at their roots, he is a defensive back, but I don't think this is anything. I don't think there's anything fake about this. Put it that way. I think he's going to be a elite player on both sides of the ball.
Okay, so let's ask, how Boo Carter be on offense? Let's say won't play, average, good, great. We'll give 4 choices to you, and we encourage you to vote right there. I don't want to be a doubting Thomas, but I still have my doubts. I still have my doubts that he will have a major impact for the Vols, just because Tennessee, for one, is going to be short Jermod McCoy, I believe, at the beginning of the season. Now, I know they don't play the same position, but still, you want some cohesiveness there. And I've just been around coaches too many times that have said this, that a guy can play both sides of the ball. Now, if you go back, there have been players, Caleb, you probably remember as well as I do, there have been players that have played on both sides for Tennessee. It just doesn't happen very often.
It does not. And I mean, historically, I mean, during the General Nealon years, everybody played both sides, honestly, back in those days. But you are right. It's not a regularly recurring thing to play both sides anymore. The one I can remember the most is 2003, Dave, when Mark Jones was primarily a receiver, but they definitely utilized him on defensive plays that year to make an impact.
They did.
Yeah, that's the one that stands out to me the most. One of the greatest defensive calls in the history of college football was John Chavis sending Mark Jones in on a blitz that he dialed up to whack Brock Berlin when Tennessee was playing Miami and forced an interception that Jabril Wilson came down with in the red zone when Miami was actually driving for a potential game-winning touchdown. So it has happened in the past. I think more so than anything, though, I think they're dead serious about using Boo Carter a lot. Remember, Squirrel White hit the transfer portal in the offseason. And we have to be honest about the fact that Squirrel White probably hit the transfer portal because Boo Carter was demanding that he be able to play more on offense. And David, am I crazy for thinking those two things were connected? And I was on that. I was believing that from the start. And I think even more so now. Yeah, Squirrel White. Honestly, I think that's the biggest reason Squirrel White hit the portal.
Wow. That's a pretty big leap. If Squirrel White's scared of Boo Carter, a defensive back, then I don't know that I want him on my team. I mean,
well, it's not scared.
Go ahead.
What if Boo Carter basically made some demands that I demand to be the first the first team guy on offense. And the coaches said, all right, we're going to acquiesce to that, even if Squirrel White's better. And Squirrel White saw that he wasn't going to get a fair shake to start. I mean, it's
okay. There are two things that scare me about that. The making demands thing, and we've just gone through the Ricky Gibson needs more money because, gosh, he's got a starving family, I'm sure, with what he was making before. That would be problematic to me. Mark Jones was a different situation. They went to him and asked him if he was willing to work on the defensive side. Now, he may have suggested it, but he was a very unassuming player. My concern with Boo Carter is that he might be upset if he's not playing enough on offense, that might affect his defensive play. This concerns me because players have so much more leverage. Used to be if a player came to you and said, hey, I would like to play on offense, you'd say, well, stick it. You're not going to play on offense. You're going to play on defense where you're most needed. But that is not necessarily the case anymore. You can transfer in a heartbeat. And there's no question that he could do that and find a ton of places to play. I think he's a special talent. I don't think he's like Mark Jones in that Mark was very unassuming. I think he was happy to play on both sides of the ball, but I don't think he demanded to play on both sides of the ball. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's not like demands, maybe not to play both sides of the ball, haven't been made, but they think about this. The 98 team, we know Peerless Price went to the coaches and said, I want to play kick returner. Now, I know that's not offense or defense, but he said, and the coaches told him, you're too valuable a receiver. We don't want it. And basically, Peerless Price accused them of not having the same faith in him that Florida State had in Peter Warwick at that point. And they bought it, and Peerless Price finished the second half of the year as a kick returner. We know he had a kickoff return for a touchdown against Alabama that year. So, I mean, I don't know if he demanded it per se, but given the fact that he was the only reliable wideout they had that year with T. Martin at quarterback, I'm pretty sure he had some leverage to say, I want to play kickoff returner at that point.
Yeah, I probably had quite a bit of leverage, but still, he would have had to transfer, sit out a year, and I'm sure Tennessee would have stuck it to him because if you remember, they had to give you a release to not have to pay for your school at another location, which I always thought was the craziest rule, wasn't it? That an amateur athlete would have to pay his own way at a school. That's a financial penalty. That never made any sense to me. Of all the bad rules the NCAA has put together, that may be the worst.
No, it's a terrible rule. It's an absolutely ridiculous rule. It was a stupid rule from the start. I totally agree with you. There was a level of, it exercised a level of power for the coaches. Let's call it what it is. We haven't talked about this. I thought the banning on NIL and the banning on like any sort of player's ability to maximize their market value, I thought that was more about the NCAA trying to line their own pockets. And maybe that is true, but honestly, looking back, it was more about giving the coaches all the power. And the coaches, the banning of paying players benefited coach. The banning of player power benefited coaches way more than it benefited everybody else. You saw out of whack salaries for head coaches, and you saw them be able to just arbitrarily block transfers to different schools. So no, I totally agree.
I want an update on our poll question, but then I'm going to reset it just a little bit. You don't have to change it because I want to hear people on the chat board and what you think about that. And I'm just going to ask this. If you were Josh Heupel, assuming you would keep Boo Carter, right? Assuming he doesn't leave because he's mad at you, would you play him on offense or him focus solely on defense? Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott. Okay, so I'll just ask you straight. I'm going to Coach Calhoun. Would you play Boo Carter on offense?
Yes. Yes. I saw him last year as a punt returner. Boo Carter is one of the deadliest players in football with the ball in his hands. I'd play him on offense before defense, honestly. I think that I don't think this is 2008, 2009. I think a player of Boo Carter's caliber provides much more value on offense than defense. Dave, I'm going to give you a hot take. If Eric Berry committed to me today, I'd put him at wide receiver before I put him at safety. I just think he's too good.
Come on. He was one of the best safeties in the history of the modern era of football.
This day in football, what affects the game more, an elite safety or an elite wide receiver?
It's not a bad point. You know, he played quarterback in high school. He could have definitely handled it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Put it this way. It's now coming to baseball terms when you think about it. Babe Ruth in the 1920s, when the Yankees signed him, they decided to move him away from pitcher because they realized, as great of a pitcher as he was kind of better being every day in the lineup, wasn't he? And so
But that was a complete move. He didn't play both. He stopped pitching when he started.
That's what I'm. Yeah, he did both with Boston. But what I'm saying is that if you have to choose during the small ball era of baseball in the 19-teens, they felt pitching was more valuable. During the home run era of the 1920s, which Babe Ruth ushered in, they realized being an everyday player was more valuable. I think we're in an era of offense now where being an elite wide receiver is more valuable than being an elite defensive back. Tomorrow, you can get one player in their prime, and you can sign, let's say, Darrelle Revis or Randy Moss. Who are you signing?
Oh, I'm signing Randy Moss.
You want the receiver, don't you? I mean,
I can't turn down Randy Moss. Now, do you want to say Deion Sanders?
Yeah, I'll go Deion Sanders or Randy Moss.
I'd take Deion, actually, in that one. Who would you take?
I'd still take Randy Moss unless we're talking about putting Deion at wide receiver. Because sorry.
No, that's fine. David says I would play him 10 to 15 plays a game. That's about my limit. How much would you play him? He doesn't need to go out there and play 85 snaps on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, like he doesn't need to do what Travis Hunter did. I could give you 10 to 15 reps a game, but they need to be able to mix it in creatively. This is where Alex Golesh would be so valuable. He'd be creative on when to mix Boo Carter in.
Derek says, I hope Boo surprises Georgia early in the year. I hope we show little with him until that game. I can pretty much guarantee you that's going to be the plan. Or they'll run him a lot on offense against Syracuse to give Georgia something to prepare for. But I'm more along the lines of what Derek says, and that is he's not going to play a ton of offense until the Georgia game. Would you agree with that?
I would want to agree with that, and it should be that way. But you bring up the point of the Syracuse game to show him a new look. But then there's also the point of, I mean, I don't know why, but against lesser teams, Heupel loves running up the score. So it seems like he likes to show his cards against lesser teams more than anything else.
That's a great point. Ethan Davis catches a touchdown pass. Was it the first game of the season? And then he was MIA for the rest of the year. So maybe that is what he'll do. But I don't think Georgia's going to see Boo Carter and be immediately fearful. Here's the other option. Let's be real here for a second. We'll talk receivers a little bit later in the program. But what slot receiver do they have now with Squirrel gone?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I mean, really, we know who the outside receivers are going to be. They're going to be Brazel and Mike Matthews, who, by the way, I hear Mike Matthews looks absolutely great in practice. Okay, so I know that Josh Heupel came out and said that he was injured last year. I thought that was a cover for a guy that wasn't ready to play. He's ready to play this year, and this is also year number 2, so it fits right in there that he would be able to that he would have an impact in year number 2, because typically Josh Heupel's receivers and to some extent quarterbacks don't have an impact in year number 1. As far as Staley, maybe slot, I think that would be the way you would go. But from a talent perspective, there's no question that Boo Carter is more talented than Staley. No question.
None, and this is the point. Maybe I think they're going with Boo Carter because of just how great he is with the ball. Again, he can do some special things with the ball in his hands. I'm seeing the best player I ever saw at Tennessee, Dave, and I don't know who you would say, with the ball in his hands, not catching, route running, but once he had the ball in his hands, was Cordarrelle Patterson. I'm wondering if I feel like they think Boo Carter could be that.
Well, it doesn't quite have the size, but this from David. Who would you rather have, Rob Gronkowski or Aaron Donald?
Rob Gronkowski.
I'd rather have Aaron Donald. You said that so quick, I thought we were going to agree.
You're stuck in the 90s, man.
By the way, built different with a post, and we're going to get to this a little bit later. We'll have practice news coming up. Travis Smith should play early. He's that good and physically ready. I have absolutely been told that as well. So we'll have an update on practice a little bit later, but Travis Smith has looked fantastic. There's a reason he was so highly rated. I just have my doubts that Josh Heupel is going to play somebody a lot in year number one. It's time for Bank on It, brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better. Let's pull up this clip from David Sanders Jr. And I love this, but we'll talk about it. Is he too cocky or is he just confident enough? So can we go ahead and play that clip?
Yeah, just give me 1 second. The ad is playing for the clip, but it'll be ready in just 1 second. But while setting it up, just letting everybody know, David Sanders has been, just to give you a quick rundown, David Sanders has pretty much been plugged in to work in at right tackle. That's what they've been doing now. And he was kind of asked yesterday just about his transition to the college game. And this is what he said. I'm going to show you a quick moment. He talks about bowl practice. So here we go. This is David Sanders yesterday.
In college, you hear like the SEC, like that's a big time jump from high school to come to the SEC. So I feel like coming in during bowl practice, just being able to see that you're not far off from the top guys that they already have. I went against like James Pierce the whole bowl practice. We were getting ready for that. So just seeing that, I do have things to work on, but if I continue to work, I'm not far off from a guy that's about to be a top 20 draft pick, and in a couple weeks. So that was an eye-opening experience for me. And now being in spring ball, just getting to learn the plays and feeling more comfortable.
Bank on it. That's too cocky or just confident enough?
I think it's just confident enough for a guy that is basically the face of this past recruiting class, more than even George McIntyre.
More than George McIntyre. By the way, I hear great things about him too, to throw that in there. He's going to need to be very, very confident. We all saw what Lance Hurd went through last year, right? I think he got down a little bit. I don't think it was just an injury. You need to be confident to play offensive tackle in the SEC. Now, right now, he's working his way up the depth chart. But you know what I love about him is he came in at 270, worked against James Pierce, and he's put on 20 pounds since he's been there. I can't tell you the number of players that I've covered that never got the weight on, and it inhibited their play, especially in year number one. The fact that he's put on 20 pounds, to me, speaks volumes. Now, right now, he's running a lot with the backups. I'll go ahead and tell you that from information we get from practice, but I think the plan is obviously to have him ready to go at right tackle, which happens to be Tennessee's featured position. It's unusual. Usually it's left tackle, but at right tackle, I think he'll be there. So bank on it. We do not think that David Sanders Jr. is too cocky.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions.
So tell me, what do you expect out of David Sanders Jr.? Anything short of starting day one? And I talked to Philip Fulmer about this, and I just asked him, I asked him, I said, how many players were ready to go from the get? And he basically said two. He said Michael Munoz and Bill Mayo were the two that were actually ready to go. And the fact that he is ready to go is exciting, but still, it's asking an awful lot to play offensive line in the SEC in your first year.
It is, but twofold. Actually, threefold. I'm pretty confident because very few people have the star ratings that David Sanders has when they arrive. Also, Dave, I think one of the reasons the switch to right tackle has worked so well for Tennessee in the past, I don't think in this offense it's as complicated to play tackle as it is guard or center. And I think you can pick things up a little more quickly. The other part of this is you brought up Lance Hurd. Let's remember this. One, Lance Hurd was dealing with a sprained ankle. The other point, though, and we got to be fair on this, Lance Hurd probably had his confidence shot a little bit transferring to Tennessee, right? Because remember, he transferred to Tennessee because he lost his starting job. He wasn't going to be the starting left tackle at LSU, like he thought. And so he probably, I mean, there was probably some doubt that crept in with Lance Hurd. As of right now, good or bad, David Sanders has no reason to feel any doubt. I mean, he's coming in and it's pretty much, when is he going to start at tackle? That's pretty much what everybody's asking. And now I'll ask you this. And I've heard of offensive linemen being captains and leaders, Cooper Mays. The confident to cocky like line. Have you ever heard of an offensive lineman having that and it working out? Aren't they supposed to be, seen, not heard type of player?
Yeah, that's why this is so unusual. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. The greatest offensive linemen, they were great speakers. And I used to love interviewing offensive linemen because they were great quotes, but they usually didn't come out and say, hey, I went against James Pierce in bowl practice and I feel pretty good about where I'm going. I mean, usually that's not the case. That's pretty strong verbiage.
Oh, that is. He's like, I was fine against it. And he said a top 20 draft pick. At first, when I first saw the quote, I thought he was saying, I'm a top 20 draft pick already, but I realized he was referring to James Pierce as a top 20 draft pick. But no, you're right. It's kind of, I haven't heard an offensive lineman do that. Now, look, what we just heard, David Sanders is right par for the course with most offensive linemen I've heard in terms of very well-spoken, very smart. You know what I mean? He is on that level. But yeah, I haven't heard that type of confidence typically from an offensive lineman. They stay kind of quiet sometimes. The only one I kind of remember, I think Aaron Sears had a little bit of cockiness with him, didn't he? But Aaron Sears was so darn good in college that it didn't matter.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a cocky offensive lineman. David Sanders Jr. may be the first, and there's not a lot of firsts in my career. David says if Larry Johnson beats out David Sanders and keeps that job, that should be concerning. I'm going to disagree, David. I hear great stuff about Larry Johnson. If he were to hold on to that job for a year, and what year is he, by the way? Larry Johnson,
I think he's a redshirt sophomore, so a third year. I don't know how you do it. I look more at like what year, like number, than I do look at your like class, because that should tell how ready you should be for the program, right?
Yeah, I don't think it would be the end of the world if Larry Johnson, because I've heard great stuff about him. I don't think it would be the end of the world if he started, and then I'm just throwing a hypothetical out there, and then eventually Sanders took over that position and Johnson transferred. I don't think that would be the end of the world.
Do you not think that there's a chance they put Johnson in at guard? I mean, the dude is huge. So
he's long. I mean, he's a long player. He's not a stout player. So I know that they like him at tackle, but you have to shift people around. Sometimes, and Philip Fulmer used to say this all the time, you just got to get your best five out there. Maybe you're not a natural guard. Maybe you're not a natural tackle, but sometimes you've got to just put your five best out there. And Larry Johnson and the Hornets just saying, love them days of basketball.
Do you know what I love about that? I love that in Space Jam, Larry Johnson was one of the talents they stole in the NBA. It was Muggsy Bogues, Larry Johnson, Sean Bradley, Charles Barkley, and Patrick Ewing. That starting five could never win. Okay, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. Go ahead and throw Blake Griffin in there if you want to. Adam says it's hard to stay grounded when you're financially set at 18 years old. That scares me a little bit. Does confidence go from confident to cocky at some point? That does concern me.
18 sitting on 1.8 mil. Sorry, there's a Drake line where he says
no idea what song that is.
There's a Drake line where he says 25 sitting on 25 mil. So yeah.
Hit that like button. We greatly appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed, do that as well, because man, you won't find coverage like this anywhere else. We've got a very special guest, and I love this guy. He is a Knoxville product, former Vol, and he's looking young and fit and just fantastic. Craig Cobb, former Diamond Vol, former Tennessee baseball player, pitcher. Craig Cobb, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you, Dave?
I'm well. This baseball team's pretty good.
Yep, just run-of-the-mill Tony Vitello team. So leading the nation in homers and best staff in the country. So, ho-hum. Nothing here.
That's absolutely right. Did you ever think that Tennessee baseball would be this, national champions? Or let me ask it this way. When did you start to think that this program could win a national championship and be dominant?
Probably coming out of COVID. They just stacked so much talent, and they seem to play just a different type of baseball. He's just recruited and developed so many different guys that this, winning a College World Series is probably the hardest out of all the college championships. You can run into a mid-major with an ace that sets you down in game one of regional. You're really not getting that in the other sports. So I think he's just done a fantastic job, him and his entire staff, on recruiting, culture, and then coaching the guys up when they get here. Everyone seems to come in here and improve. So it's a great staff. They've set a great culture. So winning doesn't really surprise me.
So Craig, I want to talk a little bit about, because the news obviously of the day is Alberto Osuna writing that letter to the NCAA. I'm just going to read the first paragraph real quick, and then I want to get your thoughts on the whole situation. But Alberto Osuna wrote and for those who don't know, he has been denied an eligibility waiver to play for Tennessee after transferring to Tennessee. And his quote was, or his first paragraph was, "Dear NCAA, I have many unanswered questions and I need your help. After the blanket waiver and a conversation with you, I uprooted my life and moved to another city with the expectation that I could continue to play the game that I love. It was an amazing opportunity to have the chance to come play for Coach Vitello and the defending national champions, but I also came here for the NIL potential that didn't exist in Tampa, and to be able to help my family and I financially, to help my father who underwent back surgery and hasn't been able to get back to 100% since." And basically then goes on to say how the NCAA was inconsistent with him. What are your thoughts on the letter he wrote to the NCAA yesterday?
I think that he's, I think based on the Pavia situation over in Vanderbilt, it seems like they've got a good argument. Luckily, they don't, him playing would obviously, he's got good stats and he's got a good track record. So, that would obviously help, but it would almost be a luxury at this point. So, they don't really have the season riding on him. It would be it would definitely be a big addition if this was to get approved. Me, I'm not a huge fan of the NIL. I'm definitely old man screaming on my front porch there. But it's I think the Pavia situation is just a big Pandora's box, especially when it goes down to college baseball. I just think with JUCO being so prevalent and D2, D3, if baseball guys are, if you can go recruit a 21-year-old kid out of Walter State and he's got 4 years to play, why would you go recruit a high school kid, right? So I think it could have big time trickle down effects in baseball more than anything. But I hope it seems like he should have a case based on the Pavia ruling. I don't see much of a difference, and it sounds like that's what they're pointing to as well.
Okay, would you have been an NIL fan when you played and you put a little cash in your back pocket?
My NIL would have probably been McGriddles from McDonald's. That or Firehouse.
Did you get grilled? I could. You being a local guy, you'd rake it in. Good looking guy like yourself.
Yeah, my diet wasn't great back then, so my pregame McGriddles, was probably been in my height of my NIL earning opportunities there.
Was that your pregame meal, a McGriddle? Seriously?
If I had a Sunday start, yeah.
That is so awful for you. I hope you're eating better now. I want to bring in a comment from the message board. Frank Anderson is one of the best pitching coaches. I think of a pitcher as almost kind of on their own. But what does a pitching coach bring to the table in general? What do you think Anderson brings to the table?
Oh, man. He's fantastic. Man, they can bring so much to the table. One, just confidence. I mean, they can instill a different mentality, and that's huge for pitchers. Obviously, the way that he is, their philosophy, they throw a ton of strikes. That is not the case, the 10 years prior to that. But I mean, it's not just one or two guys. They bring in, they just don't walk anybody as a staff, and they haven't for the past, 8 years. And so their game plans are good. They can clearly develop, velocity and develop secondary pitches, and they can throw them all for strikes. I mean, you just don't have to look too much farther based on the amount of guys they strike out versus how many walks and hits they give up. Not a bunch of guys like me giving up just a crap ton of hits and hoping you get a flat or a double play. I mean, they're just pounding the zone with high velocity and quality stuff. And I mean, it's the first guy on Friday night, obviously Doyle is putting up ridiculous numbers to, the 7th or 8th guy to the bullpen. It's crazy the amount of arms they have stockpiled. And I think that's all with Coach Anderson's development, and obviously the weight room. They're doing some stuff right there too.
Hey, Caleb, I want you to jump in here, but David said Craig could get a Pals NIL. That's not bad. Yeah.
Man. Yeah. Bring Pals to Knoxville, please.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be shooting for a Regas or a Club Lacan or something like that. David says, Craig, will Liam Doyle be the best pitcher in the country this year? Because I think so.
I mean, if he keeps it up, I mean, you can't argue. I think he's punching out 2/3 of the people that just stepped to the plate against him so far. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's mid-major guys or whoever it is. That's a silly number. I've seen him pitch in person a couple times, and I mean, guys are just taking awful swings against him. So I mean, he's throwing hard. It's got some funk to it, and he's got some really good secondary stuff. And again, just like everyone else, he's just absolutely pounding the zone with that with his stuff there. And it's hard to square up. It's hard to hit in general. So I'm excited to see him go against Florida Friday night. But I mean, he did great down there in Houston as well against Power 4 teams. So he's done fantastic, and he had walk problems, down at Ole Miss, and he comes here and he doesn't, in year one. So again, I think that's another feather in Anderson's cap, and just more proof of, man, he can coach guys up and coach them up quick. So it's impressive.
Craig, I want to move to the lineup for a minute, but I just have to ask you this, though, because we're talking about how deep Tennessee's pitching rotation is. They just had a no-hitter on Friday where I think they used 5 pitchers. You just became the old guy talking about how you're not a fan of NIL. How does the old guy who, as a freshman, led the team in complete games feel just about the principle of using 5 pitchers in a no-hitter?
Man, times have changed. It's our staffs were not as deep, obviously, as they are now, but I mean, it was just a different philosophy back in, 20 years ago.
It wasn't that long.
Yeah,
it was. 2004 was his freshman year.
Yeah, like a whole.
Oh my gosh, how did that happen?
A whole drinking person. Yeah, so it was just so different back then. I mean, you're not coming out if you're giving up 4 runs and you're at 100 pitches in the 7th. It's like, man, you're going to fish the 7th and run back out for the 8th. But now, and early on, I know they're trying to build guys up and not blow them out, going 8 innings in tune-up for SEC. But yeah, I mean, they're loaded. I hate it. I love seeing starters go deeper in games, but I mean, that's just not really what we do now in baseball. And when you've got the stable of arms behind them, I mean, bringing another guy throwing 98 coming in with a different look. So times have changed, and they've got the ability to mix and match with tons of guys. So go for it. It's fun to watch.
We'll hear about in April, a guy in the major leagues will go 7 innings and he'll have a no-hitter, and then they'll pull him anyway. It's just like it's almost like it's not even an expected or respected feat anymore, which is a shame. How many no-hitters did you throw going back to high school?
I don't know if I ever threw one. I threw a bunch of one-hitters, but I don't know if I ever got a bunch of no-hitters. Guys were putting the ball in play against me, so
that's right.
Reducing my risk.
Let's go to David. Who's the best freshman on the team? Clark, Bargo, Abernathy, or Coons?
Oh man, Levi Clark is he's a monster. What he's done so far is has been incredibly impressive. Just seeing him at the field, I mean, even from the stands, man, he's a big kid. And he's got a ton of power. Was highly recruited, I think, based on just performance at this point. I mean, it's got to be him, right? But I mean, you've got those guys. You've got Manny Marin, who's starting at third base as a freshman, who's done well. I think Stone Lawless is a redshirt freshman. I mean, they just have a ton of guys that are here and are young and that they can throw in and not have to rely on a bunch of fifth-year seniors. So I think the future is bright. Those guys will be here for a couple of years, and they'll just keep reloading.
Craig, we've talked a lot about the pitching. Tennessee right now heading into SEC play leads the nation in ERA and runs per game. Funny enough, which is insane. And we're talking about the pitching, but they also set a record for 3 grand slams in a game last week, 2 grand slams in an inning, which I've never heard of in my life. 2 grand slams in an inning. Going into SEC play, what's the stronger unit between the pitching and the lineup, and which one is going to reveal its strength, shall we say, more in SEC play, or be more important?
I think over the course of 30 games against that competition, I think they'll kind of go back and forth. I mean, it just really depends on who's pitching that day, and for us if they're on, for the other team if they're on or not. But I mean, it's a good problem to have when both of your your offense and your pitching staff are leading the nation in a majority of the important categories there. So but the SEC is loaded. What do they have? Half of the top 25 teams at this point, and most of the top 10 or top 15. So, ton of talent, always has been a ton of talent, but, they've also been able to manage a 25-5 run in SEC play a couple years ago. They'll lose some games, but I mean, man, if you can get to 20 wins in this conference, you're a really, really good team. So they just need to take care of business and do what they've been doing the last several years, and they should be there near the top.
Craig, Ben Joyce said he thinks that he can throw 107. I don't know if you saw that quote. Wow. Do you think he can do that?
Sure. He's a former Farragut Admiral too. So
there you go.
Actually,
no, I mean, that guy's a freak. The way they train nowadays, I'm sure he could make a tweak or two, or get a little bit stronger. But I mean, man, he's had a phenomenal start to his career, and it's fun seeing him show up on all the pitching ninja videos and whatnot. So he's got a special arm. He's a special talent. So it's been fun to see.
What do you think, Craig, of just talking general baseball now, because we're talking about 107-mile-an-hour fastballs, but what did you think of Barry Bonds saying in an interview the other day that he could still hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball at age 60? Do you think that's possible? Is it possible for a 60-year-old not juicing to do that?
I'd pay to see it. Man, that guy was steroids or not, that guy was incredible. I still think he should be in the Hall of Fame. That guy was unbelievable. But yeah, he had such fast hands. Maybe he could. Who knows?
You were known obviously for your pitching, but I'm curious, when you stepped in the batter's box, what was the fastest pitch you ever had to face? Do you remember that? I mean, because goodness gracious, to me, like I think I would rather just cower in fear in the dugout as opposed to face 105.5 or 107.
I mean, probably 88 or 90. I've stopped hitting so long ago. I think I stopped hitting my sophomore year in high school for the most part. So one of the original POs, pitcher only sort of guys in high school. We were loaded back then, so they didn't really need me. But yeah, probably 88 is my guess, 88, 90. And that looked like, just an absolute missile back in those days. So I can't imagine stepping in there against, Doyle's and 98 that's moving all over the place. That'd be horrifying.
Well, and it's exponentially faster. I don't think people understand that. It's not like, oh, that was just a mile per hour faster. When you get that high, that ball feels different, looks different.
Oh yeah, I mean and just the way it's moving too can make it seem even harder. It looks like his ball comes in and like darts off at the end. So I mean, it's getting on you quick and then it's disappearing. It's just crazy the velocity guys have nowadays. Hochaver threw the hardest that we had, and he'd occasionally touch 96, but he kind of lived more 93, 94. A lot of heavy sink, and I mean, most of the guys they're rolling out of the bullpen in midweek or sitting there 90, 94, 96. And that was kind of SEC wide in general. I mean, most guys kind of lived in that 91, 92 range, and I mean that's nothing these days. It's just the training and the talent and just physicality these guys have nowadays is just so much different. It's maybe I would have hit 86, with these days with this training. So
absolutely insane. Craig, we certainly appreciate it, and maybe we can have you on again, talk a little baseball. It has been something to behold what Tony Vitello has done during his tenure at Tennessee.
Yeah, anytime. It's fun getting out there. It's fun taking my son out there now. He turned 6 on Thursday, so he's gotten into it last year pretty big. So
wait, when's his birthday?
Thursday.
What day is that?
March 13th.
Hey, that's my birthday.
Hey, there you go. It's a great day.
There you go. That's fantastic. Maybe we'll all get together and party. Craig, good. I appreciate it. Happy birthday to your son. Telling me he has a heck of a birthday, and he's a Pisces, so I'm sure he loves being around the water. Maybe you guys can go to an indoor pool or something.
Sounds good, man.
Craig, I appreciate it. That is Craig Cobb, former Tennessee pitcher. Great to join him. Yeah, we have the same birthday. That's pretty cool, huh?
That's pretty cool.
I'm really amazed. When is your birthday, by the way?
May the 17th.
May the 17th. All right, still a young one. How old will you be?
I will be 37 this year.
37, man. That 40's creeping fast. Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. That's HOOK for 10% off. Also want to thank our friends at Joe Newbert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Newbert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. Go to joenewbertcollision.com, joenewbertcollision.com. Coming up on the program, we're going to flip back to this day in Tennessee sports history, I should say. And we're going to talk some basketball balls. They brought home a ton of awards. My email was blowing up yesterday from Tennessee Sports Information Department about the awards that they won. So Caleb has an interesting take on that as much talent as they had, maybe they should have done better than 4th in the SEC. We shall discuss with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios, East Tennessee's largest volume dealer. I bought my Jeep there. They have an incredible used selection. They have fantastic deals on new trucks, and the Bronco is fantastic. I love my Jeep. I couldn't be happier with it. Got an incredible deal in the buying process, man. I was in and out. It was simple. With Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Give me 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays. Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
Ginger Power, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
I don't know why people are swapping social security numbers on the message board, but that's probably not the most prudent thing to do.
Not the smartest thing to do, guys.
And I went to pay my cell phone bill, and you know what my security question was? What's your address? Well, anybody could find that out.
I could look that online. That's easy.
I know that's not very secure. So I was like, ask for another number or something. Give me some sort of password or something. But anyway, David's last 4 digits are 5309. So there you go. I don't know if that means anything necessarily, but there you go. It is time for this day in Tennessee sports history. If I can get this stupid thing to play correctly. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our friends at Double D Fire Protection Services. I'm going to kill this thing at some point. You realize I'm going to do that. All right, let's get to this day.
Being angry at inanimate objects.
Yes, this day in Tennessee. What is it? A good carpenter never blames his tools.
Yeah, I think is that the saying?
Yeah, I'm blaming my tools.
This day in Tennessee sports history.
It's cool, baby. It's cool.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Speaking of tools, Caleb, what do you got for us?
Well, by the way, that's what, everybody, the story of Jesus is a Jewish carpenter. Well, was he a good carpenter? Well, yeah, if you can just use miracles to fix all your problems when you're building tools, of course you'd be a good carpenter. But
that's a good point. I need tools. You could just build a house. Yeah.
Hey, Jesus walks into a bar. Bartender says, "What do you have?" And he says, "I'll have a glass of water." Wink, wink.
No, okay, it's good.
Okay.
I got in a fight one time over an argument with someone that I said Jesus never sinned, which he didn't. It's in the Bible. But I got in an argument because this guy had somehow got in his mind that Jesus stole his father's tools. No, and I about got knocked out because this guy was way tougher than me, but I wasn't going to give because I'm pretty sure I know that religious history. Okay. What do you got there, Caleb, on this day in Tennessee sports history?
On this day in 2022, not too long ago, but Tennessee basketball opened the SEC tournament with a 72-59 win over Mississippi State, which didn't seem significant, but that was the first of a 3-game run in which they won their first SEC tournament since 1979. They don't matter. The conference tournaments have never mattered. But even by that standard, this, Dave, Tennessee historically has had a weirdly bad history in the SEC tournament. One of the worst.
Yeah, and a weirdly bad history really across the board in all tournaments. I mean, not the preseason tournaments, but the NCAA tournament as well. And the other thing that I would say is, do you remember how many excuses they made, especially the Jerry Green era, about shooting, and I will give them this. When it was in the Georgia Dome and you have all that space, that's not a basketball venue. It was tough to shoot there, but I remember they made every excuse possible about not being able to shoot well in the Georgia.
Oh, they did. I remember that. And it was, but that wasn't the only time. You're right. There were just a lot of, I mean, they could have just used the Bobby Knight move. Bobby Knight, like, would just openly be like, I don't care about conference tournaments. Like, and he would win them sometimes, but he would openly say before they begin, I don't care. They're pointless.
Did you see where our friend John Adams pointed out that Tennessee may be better off not advancing in the SEC tournament?
Wow. Who is that? Who does he sound like right there?
Sounds a little bit like you. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. And we're broadcasting from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. And also want to be sure and mention that this day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by Double D Fire Protection.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
And here we go.
This was a huge waste of time, like bringing a married guy to Vegas.
Then there's this guy, the Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
I always wanted to ask the players. I never did because I didn't want to be a smart aleck, but I always want to say, well, have you ever played basketball outside? I mean, there's open space outside. Hasn't everybody played outside? I mean, you get to a point where you play mostly inside, but everybody's played basketball outside. Does that mean you can't hit the broadside of a barn?
I mean, I don't know if it does or not, but I mean, I'm just saying that. Now, are you talking about because of the way they would use the depth perception as an argument when they were playing?
Yes, at the Georgia Dome.
It's a little bit different when you there's something about outside, like the sky and like the background outside is not the same. Whereas the Georgia Dome, like you get like you step outside, you don't notice heights, but if you walk into a building and see a high ceiling, you all of a sudden can get like a feeling of heights. You know what I mean? So it's like that's where that comes.
I don't know. I was a terrible shooter all around, so that's just me. Hound Dogs.
I said a mean pick.
Yes. Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange. Go to hdknoxville.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED for 10% off. And also, if you join this channel, you will receive a welcome gift, and that is a gift certificate to Hound Dogs of Knoxville. So that's pretty cool. We want you to be a member of the channel, and we want to continue to see it grow. We're excited about that. Jimmy Himes joins us each and every Wednesday. He will join us tomorrow, so we look forward to that. He's got a couple of golf vacations going on, so he's pretty much retired, kind of, sort of. We put him to work, and he likes to work. So I look forward to having Jimmy on tomorrow. We'll talk some Tennessee football. It is time for Hot or Cold, and it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com. And I remind you that, man, you can go to another HVAC service if you want, but they're going to try to sell you a whole new unit. Not at City Heating and Air Conditioning. Support our sponsors. That's why we're here. It is now time for Hot or Cold. Again, Hot or Cold brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. Let's go ahead and get rolling on this right now. Caleb, Zakai Ziegler, first team all SEC. You got to be hot on that, right? He's one of the leaders.
Oh, yes. I'm very hot on Zakai Ziegler as first team all SEC. Congratulations to him. He may have had the most I think it may be safe to say Zakai Ziegler had the most successful 4-year period winning-wise of any player in Tennessee basketball history. I'm not sure there's a close second.
Still stunning. He's 5'9" and was able to do that. If I would have looked at him as a high school prospect, I would have said no chance. I mean, it's hard not to be hot on Zakai Ziegler.
That's hot.
All right, Chaz Lanier, second team All-SEC. I'll go ahead and start. I'm cold on him because I thought Tennessee would get more out of him. I guess I expected the next Dalton Connect. Maybe that wasn't fair, but he never wanted to take it to the rack, and he's just started to do that recently. I think he falls back in his own habits in the NCAA tournament and settles for the outside jump shot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm cold on him too. Now I'm hot on him being second team All-SEC, but scoring's the only thing he did really. Till later in the year, he became really good at rebounding, but you don't ask your scoring guard to be a rebounder. That's not what you want from them. And he was 7th in the league in scoring. No, I'm sorry. He was 5th in the SEC in scoring points per game, but when it came to in SEC games, he was 7th. So, and that's after looking like he was going to set every record in the book in January. So I'm cold on him. I may even be cold on him being second team All-SEC, to be honest, but that's a different story.
Wow. So you wouldn't even have him second team All-SEC?
I think it's debatable.
He was the newcomer of the year. So I think a lot of people respected his game, but it just wasn't. Let's say if Connect was a 10 and that's what Tennessee needed, he was probably a 7.
Yes, I agree. Now I will say this, and not only that, I'm cold on that because I think the newcomer of the year should have very obviously been Trey Johnson at Texas. Now he was the freshman of the year, Trey Johnson, but he also should have been the newcomer of the year. He averaged 20 points in SEC play. So
I get the feeling they divvy up those awards so more people get some recognition.
Communism, is that what you're saying? They're trying to spread the wealth.
The SEC is communist. That's exactly.
The SEC is absolutely communist. They're trying to. Trey Johnson should have collected both awards.
Are you hot or cold on communism?
I'm cold on communism, obviously.
Yes, I'm cold on communism as well. Ziegler,
although the communists did help us win World War II. Got to give him credit for that, but still.
That was a long time ago. Ziegler, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I'm just hot on the guy. I love him. I wrote a column that I wouldn't be surprised if Rick Barnes retires after this year because he had Ziegler, and I don't know that he wants to build back the whole thing. What are your thoughts on Zakai Ziegler?
That's hot.
I love Zakai Ziegler as a player. I totally understand where they're coming from with this decision. He was second in the SEC in steals in SEC play alone. And in overall play, he was 3rd. But I'm cold on it because of who we're about to talk about, who I think should have actually been SEC Defensive Player of the Year.
Okay, which would be Jemai Mashak.
Yes. And Jemai Mashak was, I'll just let you bring him up because the next one is Jemai Mashak and Zakai Ziegler, both SEC All Defense. We're hot on them, right? On SEC All Defense. Both.
Yes.
Yes. They both belonged on SEC All Defense. Jemai Mashak, I think, should have been SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He doesn't get the stats that Zakai gets, but we're forgetting this. A lot of those stats, particularly with little guards, Dave, they come because Zakai gambles. Well, why is Zakai allowed to gamble? Because Mashak's there to clean up if he gets beat a lot of times. And so Zakai is going to get more stats, but Mashak plays like traditional defense that you just can't measure with stats, honestly.
Okay, this comment before we get to Caleb's major take that I think people are going to question a little bit. General Ursus say Chaz has been a disappointment. I can live with the fact he wasn't as good as Dalton, but I was expecting more from him. He disappears in clutch situations. He doesn't take the bull by the horns. A fair point. What happens in the NCAA tournament if Tennessee's down 1 and they need a bucket?
They go to Zakai because he's got the mental toughness. They can't even go to Chaz Lanier, or they go to Mashak, who hits the game-winning 3. It's a bad situation. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Chaz Lanier who just threefold real quick. I'll bring it up. Against Vanderbilt, with needing a free throw to tie, Chaz Lanier missed. Against Kentucky, just took himself out of the game at home when Kentucky was shooting well and Tennessee wasn't. Didn't find other ways to score. And against Texas, A play was literally drawn up for him to score, and he passed it up. I've never heard of a scoring guard doing that.
No.
Taking all those things into account, he is a bit of a disappointment in that.
Sherman says, do you think that Ziegler has a shot in the NBA? Unfortunately, no. I mean, that's such a selective league. I mean, how many great players? I know Lofton had we're going to talk about his special a little bit later. And, but Lofton had the cancer issue, which was very serious. But, you know, if Chris Lofton doesn't get a real shot in the NBA, Zakai Ziegler's not getting a real shot in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think Chris Lofton didn't get a real shot because NBA GMs were stupid at the time, and before the Golden State era, they valued athleticism too much, the size and athleticism combination over the ability to shoot. So Chris Lofton and Ron Slay are two former Vols who, because NBA GMs were dumb, didn't get the shot they deserved in the pros. There's no way Ziegler could make it in the NBA, because if you're going to be 5'9", the athleticism is valuable, but you got to be able to be a sharpshooter at that point. Right. And Zakai Ziegler, as much as you could love Zakai Ziegler, he's not a sharpshooter. He's very, very streaky as a shooter. You can't have him, and he's not Allen Iverson level athletics. So no, he's not going to make it in the NBA. I mean, that is if you want to talk talent, like across all professional sports, the NBA is the most elite league of talent in all professional sports. It's actually almost unwatchable now because they're too darn good.
No, there's a lot of truth to that. All right. So lastly, did the Vols overachieve or underachieve with the talent?
One quick thing.
Yes.
Because you missed one, which is Meshack, Field of 68 National Defensive Player of the Year. I'm hot on that, and he should have been SEC Defensive Player of the Year too.
Yeah, it is weird to me that one player was National Defensive Player of the Year, and the other was Conference Player of the Year. That didn't make a lot of sense.
No, it didn't make a lot of sense to me at all.
But that was the Field of 68. I bet they were really upset when they had to change that name, because when they went from 64 to 68, I'm sure they had to do that. All right, so Caleb's hot take. Did the Vols overachieve or underachieve with the talent they had?
Guys, I'm going to say it. Tennessee basketball underachieved this year with the talent it had. And that's not a knock on the players. That's not even a knock on Rick Barnes. It's just they could still make up for it in the tournament, but Tennessee and Auburn were the only two schools to have more than two players earn separate SEC awards. Now, Auburn had 4 players. Tennessee had 3. But Tennessee had, depending on how you want to look at the value of it, Tennessee could have been better represented, I guess, in all the SEC awards. And that makes a big difference, too, between the Defensive Player of the Year and the Newcomer of the Year. So Tennessee had the 2 players that were like the best at their roles. Auburn didn't have any of that. Auburn had the Player of the Year. Excuse me. Auburn did have the Player of the Year, but Tennessee had the Newcomer and the Defensive Player of the Year. So, and Tennessee had 2 all-SEC players in general, and Auburn had 1. So you could actually make the case Tennessee in the first and second team. You could make the case Tennessee was better represented in the SEC awards. Either way, they either should have finished first in the SEC or they should have finished second. They finished 4th. And they finished 4th because of a couple of losses they shouldn't have had. Losing at home to Kentucky is one that, I'm sorry, there's just no excuse for losing at home to Kentucky. You should not have lost that game. You can deal with losing to Kentucky on the road, but losing to Kentucky at home was just a bad look. And they shouldn't have lost to Vanderbilt on the road. I know it was on the road, but those 2 games they should have had back. And had they had those games back, they would be 14-4 in SEC play and tied with Florida for second in the SEC. And I wouldn't be saying this, but because they finished 4th, they underachieved.
I think they overachieved. Given the fact, now I'm not taking the roster totally preseason. I'm taking a couple of weeks into the season and what we learned. Darling Stone Dubar had personal issues and never turned into the player that we believed. Zakai Ziegler, we mentioned, is 5'9". Jemai Meshack is limited offensively. Is that fair?
Yes.
I think they overachieved. I think they, or at least achieved what they should have. I mean, this team to be one of the top 4 teams in the SEC, I think is a I think it's a credit to Rick Barnes and what he was able to do, win with defense, win with toughness. Derek brings up Muggsy Bogues. Yeah, Muggsy Bogues was astonishingly quick, but I think they overachieved, Caleb.
Okay, see, I'll have a hard time with the over. I get your point. Now, the players individually may have overachieved, but I think you're missing two big ones. One, Darlingstone Dubar, you're right. That was an underachieving moment, never panned out, but we're missing a couple others. Even as the newcomer of the year, Dave, I think Chaz Lanier underachieved because of his lack of clutchness. I think that was an underachievement. And here's a big one I got to bring up. Igor Milicic Jr. underachieved. SEC defenses really seemed to figure him out.
You know what was weird about late January, early February? Didn't you feel like he had kind of found his groove and he was going to be an impact player, and then he just kind of fell off the map?
I did. Yeah, exactly. Just completely fell off. Was just kind of a forgettable player. So, and he wasn't he could have been a much better rebounder. In terms of NBA prospects, Chaz Lanier and Igor Milicic are the two best NBA prospects on this team. And I think both of them showed you reasons why you wouldn't want to draft them. Honestly.
Now, what about not having Carr and Estrella? Are you taking that into account? Because this team probably wins those two games that you mentioned if they have those two players and a little bit more depth.
I mean, if Carr and Estrella are out there, I would almost say they should win the SEC at that point. I think the reason I'm going underachieve is I'm saying the players that it's not the three players that earned all SEC awards. Those players didn't underachieve. It's that the players around them underachieved, if that makes sense. So you just brought up Darlingstone Dubar. He underachieved, dramatically underachieved. I think we have to call Igor Milicic Jr. an underachiever this year.
I think the common ground between you and me is you're going based off totally before the season started, right? I'm going like a month into the season after I've seen these guys. So I think that's kind of the rub. Is that fair?
That might be true. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Because I thought Darlingstone Dubar with him, I thought he was going to be elite. And I thought Tennessee was going to maybe not stay number one, but stay a top 5 team the whole season. And that just didn't happen.
Okay. I wrote a column. I've just got this hunch. This is not a report. This is nothing I've heard, but I have a feeling that Rick Barnes is going to retire this year. I have a feeling that he doesn't want to rebuild with Sky Ziegler. He's 70 years old. He'll be 71 this summer. I know he looks fantastic and he looks young, but what's your take on that? Would you be surprised if he retired?
I would be, but I'll tell you this. I'm a little more open to it than what I was a month ago. I thought this new age of college basketball was very conducive to him being successful. And it seemed like he's decided that he's not as into it. Because he had a quote where he said he had a quote about a month ago where he said the way Zakai plays is something that kept him wanting to keep coaching, basically was what he said. So without a Zakai or Jemai, I don't know where that's going to go.
Let's dig into that tomorrow, because I believe Rick Barnes did such a good job this year and did such a good job for Tennessee that if I were Danny White and he wanted to retire, I'd try to talk him out of it. But more so, I'd put my money where my mouth is and I'd give him a lifetime contract. I mean, UCLA came after this coach. I mean, that's a pretty good sign that basketball circles appreciate him. Bert Bertelkamp, former color commentator of the University of Tennessee basketball, will join us in just a little bit. Give me 2 minutes. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com, as we broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studios. 2 minutes, Bert Bertelkamp coming up. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Newbert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7.
Frank, like the name, but serious or something. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun, represented by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com, Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer, Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
If we can, Caleb, let's make that a poll question. Did Tennessee overachieve or underachieve? I'm curious where people stand, and if they look at it like I do, where once I learned the players, listen, they're going to be a 2 seed. If you would have told me that Tennessee is going to be a 2 through 4 seed after I saw a couple of weeks of these players, I would have said, yeah, they're going to overachieve. But I didn't have much faith in Darling Stone-Dubar. Let me ask you, because you're the one who says they underachieved. If you got into January or even mid-December, would you have said this team as a 2 seed, which they'll likely be, overachieved or underachieved?
I would have said, underachieved. I thought they had 1 seed. They were #1 during that time. And I thought Darling Stone-Dubar was going to find his rhythm. Never did. But that's pretty much where I landed. Was I thought Darling Stone-Dubar was going to find his rhythm, and he never did. And that was where the underachieve came from. And also, Chaz Lanier took a step back in SEC play that I didn't see coming. Igor Milicic Jr. He either was able to play aggressive under the basket or be finessed from the 3-point line, but he was never able to do both in a game at the same time. And that was a problem.
I forgot to tell you that Hot or Cold is brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. My apologies for that. So instead, they'll double dip, and we will go stat of the day, and it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning, cityheatandair.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
All right, it's time for 4 Downs, and it's brought to you by our fantastic friend.
Oh, wait, you don't want stat of the day?
I'm getting there. What did I say?
You said 4 downs, but 4 downs is for the next segment. Do you want stat of the day first or 4 downs? Sorry.
Sorry, I messed up there. It is time for stat of the day right now, and it's brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. A Tennessee tradition. Stat of the day is now.
Stat of the day. They never lie. Or do they? Stat of the day. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Off the Hook Sports.
Don't you still wonder what our voice girl looks like? Voice lady.
I do. I absolutely do.
She's hot. Do you? Do you think she's hot?
I don't know. Let's.
I've been around radio long enough where somebody's introduced. I'm Bob Smith. Okay, Bob, you look nothing like you sound on the radio. All right, so stat of the day is?
Stat of the day is Tennessee baseball on last Friday. I talked about they had a no-hitter in their 12-0 win over St. Bonaventure. That was the last no-hitter. The last no-hitter before then in Tennessee baseball history was a solo effort from Jeffrey Terrell on February the 15th, 2002.
Wow. Going back a little bit. And I can't believe it's been 20 years since Craig Cobb, who joined us earlier, became a Vol. That just doesn't seem possible to me.
I know. It's kind of crazy.
He was, I think, an intern at one point because he was around the station. He's really good friends with Josh Ward. So that's how he and I got connected. It is time for 4 Downs right now. Here we go.
Come on, guys. It's game time.
4 downs. Can you count? 4 downs. 1, 2, 3, 4. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
4 Downs today brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia. Daily updates at Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. So let's get to it. And the one, the only, Cooper Mays will tell us what to do here. If I can get this stupid thing to stop playing, I don't know what's going on. Cooper would tell us to like and subscribe. So hit the thumbs up button. We appreciate that. And let's go ahead and get started. So first down is...
Well, what are we got to set up the segment first before first down.
Set it up.
We're talking about Chris Lofton's SEC Storied podcast that came on Monday night. I hope you guys had a chance to watch it. If you haven't, watch it. It's great. It was very, very emotional, riveting at certain points. Chris Lofton's SEC Storied documentary.
Can I tell my Chris Lofton story real quick?
Sure.
So, I covered football for the News Sentinel. I covered baseball for what was then WNOX, is now the Sports Animal. I covered basketball, I should say. But Mike Griffith, who had a miss a day. He was out of town for some reason. And I remember going to their awards banquet. For some reason, they had me cover that. Maybe it was just a slow time in football. I don't know. But I remember it was so odd. It was like in a little conference room, like a small, how hotels have those small conference rooms? It was at the, it's now the Marriott downtown. And Bruce Pearl and Chris Lofton sat down and told everybody about the cancer diagnosis. And it was just absolutely a stunner. And if you remember, we asked all year why Chris Lofton wasn't playing at a higher level. Well, that was why. And that's why it's such an incredible story. And God bless him and for overcoming that, and just an incredible guy to deal with. But first, let's get to 4 Downs right now, as we want to talk about the Chris Lofton documentary. When this runs out, I will be glad to let you know. But Cooper Mays, former Tennessee Vol, what should people do if this will go off? It will.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Do it. What down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
Yeah, I think these things are overblown a lot, but making Kentucky pay for not offering him, I thought that was pretty cool. I do think it motivated him. I think those things are overblown a lot, but I think that he wanted to be his best, partly because Kentucky turned their back on him.
Yes, and we're talking about standout parts from the documentary, and they made that clear. And this is Chris Lofton never missed a chance to make Kentucky pay. Remember, he was a 3-star, wanted to go to Kentucky. Kentucky didn't offer him, and it was really bad timing for Tubby Smith, because as he was becoming an All-American at Tennessee, Tubby Smith was having his worst 2 seasons at Kentucky. that's kind of what sent him out. That's kind of what ran Kentucky out of town. I mean, it wasn't just Kentucky fell off a little bit. It was that they fell off when Chris Lofton was balling in Knoxville, and people were very upset about that.
Have you ever noticed that Tubby Smith and Philip Fulmer had the same career?
They kind of similarly didn't they?
I mean, it's they couldn't stay elite long. Both won a championship, and then it was just kind of like they slid down the hill, and it was like a slow hill, and it was just kind of rolling downhill. But they basically had the same career. I always thought that was odd.
Coop here, first down.
Oh, that's first down, Coop. What do we got?
Cooper Mays here, second down.
All right. Dropping off Kevin Durant. Man, if you would have told me that Chris Lofton and Kevin Durant are going to square off in Austin, and Lofton, I know it's a team sport, but Lofton's going to win that battle, I would have said no way.
Yeah. Well, this one wasn't Knoxville, to be fair, but still Lofton won the battle. But yeah, it was one of the most memorable games. For those who don't remember, funny enough, Rick Barnes was at Texas at the time. Tennessee trailed Texas by, I believe, 16 points in the second half, 18 points at one point in the game. And Chris Lofton absolutely he actually was shooting horribly in the first half. And then he just got red hot in the second half and led the comeback. And the most notable moment of the game, when Tennessee took the lead, their first lead after trailing for so long, Chris Lofton drops off Kevin Durant from 35 feet out. Kevin Durant fully extended. 6'11" Kevin Durant, who has a foot on Chris Lofton, fully extended. Lofton fades away, drains the three. Then he goes on. The game goes into overtime. He goes on to finish with 35 points and 11 rebounds as Tennessee wins 111-105. It was, I mean, it's one of the rare elite moments in Tennessee basketball history.
No, I agree. And, I actually saw Kevin Durant in person shut down Trae Young. I took my son to Atlanta to watch a Nets Hawks game just so we could say we saw one of the greatest players ever. And that game was nip and tuck until 5 minutes left. And they took Durant and they put him on Trae Young, and that game was over.
Oh, yeah.
Done. That was the only change they made. What down is it, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here, third down.
All right. He said Memphis is his favorite memory at UT, even though he didn't play that great. That just tells me what a team player he is.
Yeah, it does. Same with me. Chris Lofton said that Memphis was his favorite memory at Tennessee. It was when Tennessee was 2 and Memphis was 1. Chris Lofton only had 10 points, and it was because he hit a couple free throws at the end of the game to seal the deal. But you're right. That does say what a team player. He could have remembered the year. That was the cancer year, and he probably could have redshirted and come back another year, but he wanted to be a part of what he knew was going to be a great Tennessee basketball team. And, I mean, Chris Lofton, it really tells you how amazing he is. His favorite memories are the team success that they had more than anything else.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. What down, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here, fourth down.
Thank you, Coop. How he handled the cancer diagnosis, he easily could have redshirted. He easily could have gone public with it, but how he quietly battled that while being an athlete is beyond me. I just don't. I've seen people go through cancer, and I realize there's more serious forms of cancer than others, but it's still cancer. And how he went through that absolutely still just blows me away. And we talked about how maybe he didn't live up to the hype, but he was pretty darn close. And to have cancer and be able to do that still is one of the great stories in Tennessee athletics.
Yeah, and let's not forget, even that year with the cancer, he set the school record for three-pointers made in a season. And on top of that, he was privately he also took a bit of a lesser role because Tyler Smith was on the team. He was privately battling cancer, and there were so many questions about his on-court performance early in the year. He didn't go public with it, and what we found out was the biggest reason he didn't go public, he was very worried about how it would affect his teammates and the team as a distraction as a whole. That's the only reason. And I mean, again, that just speaks to everything about Chris Lofton's character and the way he approached the game, honestly.
Absolutely salute to that young man. And I look forward, like I mentioned, you just heard from Cooper. What did Cooper say?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
They're planning on one of those SEC stories on Cooper Mays. So I hope they do that and discuss his faith. Cooper Mays may be in his early 20s, but he said things to me that were wise and insightful beyond measure. So we're joined by a very special guest right now. I love this guy. I've told you before, He's my favorite color commentator. Bert Bertelkamp joins us now, but now he's retired. Still looks fantastic. You look like you've got another 30 years in you, Bert.
I don't know about that, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. Why was now the right time to retire?
Well, it's been a long run, and Bob announced his retirement. And last year, I thought of giving it up, and met with Bob over the summer, and he told me it looked like it was going to be his last year. So I decided at that point I'd go another year with him, and I'm glad I did. So we started together, and we ended together, and it seemed appropriate.
Bert, I want to ask you a lot of memorable moments that you covered during this period with Tennessee basketball. Do you have one that you just want to say stands out the most? One that you maybe famously maybe shouted money or went woo, or did any of those things that became memorable? Is there one that stands out to you the most?
Well, I carried on about every game, yelling something off the wall. But I would have to say the two Elite Eight runs were certainly special. Losing to Michigan State in a close game was very difficult, but we had a shot. And we weren't able to pull it off, but it was a great run. And then last year, getting knocked off by Purdue by Zach Edey, that was special as well. And it was unfortunate that we couldn't win the game and go to the Final Four. But those were two memorable moments. And it's also memorable anytime you beat Kentucky, it being such a big rival and such a great school, basketball school. And knocking them off anytime is great. Knocking them off in Rupp Arena is even greater. So those are all highlights that stand out.
Bert, some people may not know that are younger than me, but your dad played basketball for Tennessee as well. And I'm curious, what was his reaction when you told him you were going to be the color commentator? Because that had to be a special moment.
Well, he's always been super supportive of just about anything that I do. And he was happy about it. And it took time away from my business and my family. So that was everybody in my family sacrificed for me to do it. And starting out, I was just going to do it year by year. And I remember talking to my family each year and saying, are you okay with me doing another year? And they said, sure, Dad. And my wife, Sheila, said, sure, go for it. And of course, Dad was always super supportive. So I've had a great team behind me, cheerleading for me and supporting me all the way. So it's been a great run, 26 years. And, two of my children have never, well, one's 27. So she was 1 when I started, and one's 24. So I've been doing it his whole life. And then my older daughter, Brownie, she was a little older, but, it's been a big part of our life, frankly, and we've had a lot of fun, and I've really appreciated their support.
Bert, I'm going to ask you a little bit of I'm going to put you on the spot just a bit, but if you could do an all-time starting five of just your time period as the color commentator for Tennessee basketball, could you put one together?
Well, with the player you all been talking about, and rightfully so, Chris Lofton would be there. I would have to say, and it'll be tough. People have asked me this, and now I would have to say Zakai Ziegler would be the point guard on that team. Vincent Yarbrough would probably be on the team. There was a lot of great. Ron Slay was a tremendous player. You mentioned Tyler Smith was a great player. It was unfortunate how his career ended, but he was a tremendous player. Those are some that stand out. I know I'm leaving out off a bunch. Of course, Dalton Connect is a tremendous player and having a great season as a rookie. He only played 1 year, but it was a memorable year for sure. So I'd have to mention him. I'm sure I'm leaving out some, but there's been a lot of great players. C.J. Watson was a tremendous player. Tony Harris was a tremendous player. There's been a lot.
Yeah, we could definitely put together a good team. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, I was going to say, you pretty much hit all the ones I would have put. The only other one I would have had would have been Grant Williams. But
oh yeah, Grant for sure. Grant would have been on there, and Admiral Schofield. He was maybe a tier below them, but he was a tremendous player. And Jordan Bone was a tremendous player for Tennessee. Great point guard. And so, yeah, you're right about Grant. He definitely deserves to be. He'd be a starter for sure on that team.
Yeah.
Bert, I wrote a column on offthehooksports.com. I just plugged my own website. But that if I were Danny White, I would do everything I could to make sure that Rick Barnes didn't retire anytime soon. I think he brings so much class and obviously success. People will knock the NCAA tournament record, but what's he meant to Tennessee basketball in the time that they needed some stability?
Well, he's meant everything. He's a tremendous Christian man starting out, and his character is second to none, and he's built a culture within the Tennessee program that is just outstanding. The players are team first people. They give back to the community. You don't ever hear about Tennessee basketball players getting in trouble. If they don't fit in, they tend to transfer out, but we've had very few players transfer out. They come in and they learn how to be a man. They learn how to be a better player. They work really hard. So you've got a lot of. It takes a certain type player to play for Coach Barnes because he coaches you hard. I mean, I'm sure if you've been to practice, you've seen that he doesn't spare anybody, and he wants everybody to get better. And he works with walk-ons as well as his starting five just as hard. So and he's taken us to another level. I mean, we've been ranked for years, it seems, and the teams are always competitive. And you know, one thing is a ex-player and a color guy is the thing that I appreciate the most is how hard they play. They don't always play great. Sometimes they don't make shots and their offense struggles, but they never lack effort. They always play hard. They always give 100%, and I can get behind that all day long.
Bert, talking about Rick Barnes, I want to know your thoughts on this. Everybody, when they compare coaches, they talk recruiting and X's and O's. And I think there's a third thing we always forget that I think is Barnes' biggest strength. And I want to know what your thoughts are, which is obviously player development. A player who plays for Rick Barnes may not make it to the NBA, but if they're trying to get to that level, nobody will better prepare them for it than Rick Barnes. Is that fair to say?
And there's no doubt. And that's one of the reasons he's been successful recruiting. Smart players, young players, they want to get better, and they all want to play in the NBA. And we know that that's a long shot for most players, really for all players. But they get better under Coach Barnes. If you come in with an open mind and a tough skin, you can't be thin-skinned and play for him. He's going to tell you what it takes to get better and what you're going to need to do to play to the best of your ability. And I can't think of a single player who's backed up. Some improve more than others, but the ones that work hard and follow his lead and do what he says to do and work on their body and work on their game get better. And that's what really good players want to do is get better. And they get better when they come to Tennessee.
Bert, the thing that amazes me about Rick Barnes is he turned 70 last summer. And you would think that at that age that this NIL and transfer portal thing would be foreign to you. It's a young man's game. But if you look at Connect, Chaz Lanier, the players he's brought in, he's mastered what is a totally different face of basketball.
Yeah, he has. And he's adjusted with the times. He doesn't let it bother him or get him down, and he just makes the proper adjustments. But he's certainly an expert at identifying talent and figuring out what buttons to push to get them to come to Tennessee. And you're right, he's done a phenomenal job. When you look at Connect and you look at Chaz Lanier, you look at Igor, you look at Okpara, major contributors to this year's team. And I'm sure they're looking right now to identify players for next year because we're losing a lot. And it makes it difficult. I haven't had an in-depth discussion with Rick about it, but I'm sure he doesn't particularly like the way things are, especially with the transfer portal, where everybody's a free agent and people come and go every year. That's difficult. You have to re-recruit your own team every year as well as find new players. So it makes things harder, but he's made the proper adjustments. And, again, I haven't spoken to him about his potential retirement, but I know him, and he's high energy, big time. He can work as hard as he needs to, and I don't see him retiring anytime soon. I see him going for a few more years.
Bert, just from your conversations with Rick and how well you know him, given the last 7 or I guess 9 years now that he's been at Tennessee, how much do you think a player like Zakai Ziegler reinvigorated his love for coaching? Because it seems like that is the most vintage Rick Barnes player he ever has coached, honestly.
Yeah, Ziegler's phenomenal. You know, I go back to his freshman year when he showed up. He was not one of these entitled people he came in with a chip on his shoulder that he could play and he was going to do everything he could. And he really did. He's followed the direction of Coach Barnes and the staff, and he's gotten better every year. But the main thing about Zakai, he's got a huge heart, and he's a great young man, one of my all-time favorites. And you know, certain players come in with you know, they've been told how great they were since they were 10 years old. And they get to college and it's a slap in the face. They find out there's a lot of other great players and some better than them. And Zakai didn't come in with that attitude at all. He came in with the attitude of, you're giving me an opportunity and you're taking good care of me. I'm going to take good care of you. I'm going to work as hard as I can and do whatever's asked of me. And he's done that and more. And he's had a phenomenal career. And I've been, you know, keeping up with his stats some this year because he's breaking records. He's climbing the charts in Tennessee and a number of individual records. And his production has been phenomenal. And when you have a guy like Zakai Ziegler on your team and on the floor, you've always got a chance to win. He's going to make winning plays, and he's done that over and over. He's just a fine young man.
Bert, what was your least favorite part about calling games?
Traveling.
I knew you were going to say that. It's the worst.
They were trying to figure out how many road games we've been on, and it's you know, we go on, I'd say 12 to 15 trips times 26 years. It's a lot of road games. It's in the hundreds, and you know, the games are always fun, and it's fun to call games in the visiting arenas because everybody's against you, your back's to the wall, and our team usually responds very well, and it's exciting. But you know, and when I was younger, I didn't mind it as much. But as I've gotten older, showing up at the airport at 2 a.m, off a road trip, 2 or 3 in the morning, it takes a toll on an old man like me. But the traveling has been the only thing that, and it I wouldn't say it's a negative, but it does get a little bit old, spending all that time in a hotel room waiting on a game to come up. But yes, overall, it's been a blast and a great ride.
Bert, again, I've told you this before. You're my favorite color commentator in any sport. I thought the money call was great. The fact that I could tell that you wanted Tennessee to win, but you weren't Homer-ish like Larry Munson or somebody like that. It just you did a magnificent job, and I'll miss your call. I certainly will.
Well, I appreciate it, Dave. I am a homer, that's for sure, but it's called the Vol Network for a reason. So,
it's true.
People listening want Tennessee to win, so most people anyway. But I've had a great time. It's been a blast. The basketball program, it means a lot to me, and the Vol Network's been great to work for. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I've been the winner in the relationship for sure.
Yeah, Bert, I've said before, if there's a power T on my check, then I'm going to be a homer.
That's exactly right.
I mean, that's my rule. Otherwise, I'm pretty objective.
But you know, we've had some great teams, and it would be difficult to be a color guy for a team that didn't win. And we've won big, and hopefully this year we'll win even bigger. But it's been a blast because our team, you've always felt like the program, the university was behind the program. The program was greatly supported by the fans, the Vol Nation, and so it's been an honor.
Bert,
go ahead, Caleb.
So I just wanted to, now that you talk about winning, now that I think about it, your first year as the color commentator was the year that Tennessee set a school record for wins at the time, wasn't it? Because that was the Jerry Green team that made the Sweet 16 with 26 wins. Could you go out with a bigger bang?
I'm not sure that sounds right, but we came in with, I'm not sure if it was Jerry's second year or I'm not sure, 1999. But Jerry won a bunch of games. I think he won close to 100 games the 4 years he was there. And so we've had some really good coaches. Of course, Pearl's run was outstanding. Conzo Martin was a fine fella. Donnie Tyndall was a good guy. You know, he was only there for a year in a tough situation, but he was a good guy. Buzz Peterson was a super nice guy and worked hard. So we've had some great coaches. And, you know, Coach Barnes, I'd put him at the top of the list, but all of them have been very nice to Bob and myself, and had been open arms and let us come around and be part of the program. And I've appreciated that from all of them.
Bert, thanks for the memories, and have a fantastic retirement. I know you're still probably working at your business, but again, maybe if we can go to lunch sometime, I would enjoy that.
Anytime, I'm available.
All right, buddy. You got some free time now. I appreciate it, Bert.
All right. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thanks, Bert. Bert Bertelkamp. And I'm dead serious when I say that. I've driven around the South, and I've heard a lot of color commentators, mostly in football, but he was my absolute favorite. I thought he towed the line of rooting for Tennessee, but not being over the top. 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Off the Hook Sports with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American made. Ted Russell Ford is your Super Dealer, just in time for Truck Month. Save up to $5,350 on this new Ford F-150 XLT Hybrid, or save up to $7,000 on this new Ford Expedition. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping.
A guy with a lot of jobs, but this one is the most important.
This is not government work. As such, I treat it with care and attention.
Until someone else calls. The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Adam says, who are you guys picking for your team? Admiral Schofield or Jemai Meshack?
They are both vintage Rick Barnes players who were 4-year developmental guys. I'm probably taking Admiral Schofield. He had more versatility. He could play on the perimeter or he could move inside. But yeah, I'm taking Admiral Schofield. Admiral Schofield almost made it to the NBA as a 6'6" power forward. That's impressive.
No, that is. Okay, who would you, as your starting 5, I know we got a video that you want to get to. Who would be your starting 5?
All-time Tennessee or just Bert Bertelkamp era? Or Rick Barnes era?
Let's make it Bert Bertelkamp era.
All right. I'm torn between C.J. Watson and Zakai Ziegler as my starting point guard. I don't know which way to go on that, but I'm probably going to lean Zakai Ziegler. And that's no fault on C.J. Watson, but unfortunately, CJ had to labor through 3 years of bad coaching. I know Bert Bertelkamp is not going to speak ill of a coach, but
I wouldn't hope so.
Yeah, but I can speak ill of Buzz Peterson as a coach. My shooting guard is not a question. Chris Lofton is the shooting guard. Not even a debate.
Sometimes you just want the scholarship back. That is always my favorite quote from Buzz Peterson. I mean, run him off. Sometimes you just want the scholarship back.
So
rest of your 5.
CeeLo's my shooting guard. He brought 2 guys up for the wing, Vincent Yarbrough and Dalton Connect. Vincent Yarbrough should have been on this starting 5 and was the most talented of the 2, but Dalton Connect's going to be in there. Dalton Connect has the clutch gene. Vincent Yarbrough doesn't. So I'm starting Dalton Connect over Vincent Yarbrough, and I'm not even thinking about it. My power forward is going to be...
I mean, I can't argue that.
Yeah. I'm not going to have a true center. I'm going to go 2 power forwards, and you can tell me if I'm wrong for this, but I'll just bear with me. I'm going to be a little bit undersized, but I'm going to have Grant Williams as my power forward, and then I'm going to play Ron Slay at center. Even though he was only 6'7", he's got the length.
Oh, I didn't think of Ron. Okay, I'm going to go small. I'm going to go CJ, CeeLo. I'm going to play Connect at the 3. You made me change my mind. I'm going to go Ron Slay at the 4, and I'm going small to get Grant Williams on there. I know he's not a natural center, but positionless basketball is a thing now, not as much in college as it is in the NBA. So that's who I'm going with.
Yeah, we're basically saying the same thing. It was just Ziegler or CJ. You and CJ Owen Ziegler, but they're kind of interchangeable at point guard.
And we're supposed to manufacture debates on this show, but we don't do that. We're genuine. Okay, you got a video you want to play?
Yeah, let's have a little fun, guys. This is what is this. If you ever get a chance, sometimes watching ESPN Plus or ESPNU and those random sports like they used to do in dodgeball, ESPN 8 the Ocho, you could just get some great moments. And Coastal Carolina was playing East Carolina in baseball the other day, and ESPN decided it'd be a good idea to zoom over to a couple of fans.
I saw this.
This is just great. I'm not going to play this out, so we'll talk because I don't want ESPN to flag it. But yeah, a couple of girls just, rolling down their sunglasses, taking their selfies, and check out the girl on the right. Look at what she does. Takes a butt selfie real quick.
She took a butt selfie? I didn't even see that part of it.
Yeah, on national television, she took a butt selfie, and I want to know who she sent it to. Is really what I want to know. Who did she send the butt selfie to?
Here's my phone right here. Caleb, I will go ahead and I'll leave it at this. Cameramen are the most perverted people that I've ever been around as a whole.
Oh, I know.
I mean, they're looking for hot chicks to take a picture of. You could take a picture of a baby and get the good emotional feel, but no, it's the 10 that you want to get on TV.
When I was in broadcast journalism in college, we had to find feature stories, and I did one on a coffee shop. It was like one of the first there's like these bikini style coffee shops now where the girls sell coffee, but they wear lingerie, and it's Oh. So I went there and I did a video, and I'm like, this is the one time I'm allowed to do really inappropriate shots and say it's for the job, it's for the story I'm doing. And so I did.
Yeah. I had a client one time that was like a Mexican Hooters, and girl comes up to me and she says, I say something about the owner, and is she dating him or something? And she goes, well, maybe, I'm into older men. And I said, well, I'm just 36, so I wouldn't qualify. And she goes, that's what I mean by older. And yes, you would. Like, I'm getting out of here.
That's like the most bittersweet thing to hear, isn't it? Because you're basically, she's saying she's into you, but then she's also saying you're older.
Right. And it was a client, so I had to stop by there at least once a week to say hello. And it was very uncomfortable. Very, very uncomfortable. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. We broadcast from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Have a fantastic day, everyone. We're with you live at 10 o'clock and wherever you podcast. So please hit that thumbs up button. Please subscribe if you haven't to this point. And if you join the channel for just $4.99, you'll get a $10 gift certificate plus 10% off. I'm sorry, $20 gift certificate from Hound Dogs of Knoxville, hdknoxville.com. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.